Okay, well, hello there. It's Vicky Raven from Well Kids, and thank you for bearing with me. If you joined me last night, there was a problem with the sound being picked up. I'm just going to check actually that, yeah, I can see the sounds being picked up now by the microphone. There was a problem last night, and I thought my voice was being picked up, and it wasn't. So if you joined me, you did get the slides, but you didn't get the explanations. So I know a few of you did stick with it and were there watching the slides. So thanks. I'm really, really grateful. So anyway, so this is 3 easy steps to talking to your teenager. And I just want to just point out a few things to you before we start. On the right hand side, you'll see that there is a chat box. You'll be able to see that, but obviously you're not listening to it live now, you're just getting a recording. Normally you would be able to put your messages in there and they would just come through to me. But if you do have any questions, please do email me directly at vicky@well-kids.co.uk, or you can go into my Facebook group, which is Parents with Teenagers, and I'll give you the link to that later. So let's get started. So the reason I'm doing this webinar is because I have teenagers myself, and I've got friends and colleagues, and I see clients who have teenagers or younger children who are obviously going to become teenagers fairly soon. And I hear a lot that either people are dreading their teenagers, dreading them becoming teenagers, or they just don't have a very nice time with them. And, I've had a great time with my teenagers. One is 16 and one is 19 and away at university. And, I can say it's been quite a great time for me. So to start with, we can just have a think about how does parenting make you feel? Just have a little think about that. When you consider what you have to do, does it make you feel joy? Do you feel a bit sick when you think about, the problems that your kids create for you? Do you kind of dread coming home, having to deal with the problems? So I'm going to talk to you about how you can talk to your teenagers, get a positive result from them, not get the arguments, not get the objections, but still stick to your principles, because we all have principles. We all have, the principles we live our lives by, the things we consider to be right and wrong, what we consider to be acceptable and unacceptable. I'm going to teach you a way of parenting where you can still be yourself and not have to suddenly become Mary Poppins or suddenly become Super Nanny. Your parenting style is very much down to you. But I just want to share with you a few ideas as to how you could perhaps make it a little bit easier. And also, I want to encourage you to be a parent, not be your child's best friend. They need you to be a parent. So before we go into that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me. And this is something that I talk to teenagers about because when I go into schools and I've primarily talked to year 9s, 10s and 11s, I think it's encouraging for them to know that even though I'm standing talking to them as, a successful business owner, my life has taken twists and turns, and, what I'm doing now wasn't what I planned to do when I was, any age really. So I'm going to go back to just when I was about sort of 9, 10, 11 to start with. And when somebody asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I would always say to them, I want to be in the Nolans. I want to be a singer. I want to be a dancer. I want to be in the Nolans. My mum was actually quite horrified at this because, you know, I was clever, I could play the flute, I could play the piano. Why on earth would I want to be on the stage? It's quite interesting because I still really love dancing and I still really love singing, and my children love performing. So it's, you know, it's something that's in me, and something, you know, obviously when I go out speaking, it's a kind of performance. And then a little bit later, in the sort of early mid 80s, Diana Spencer came on the scene, and I decided that her job looked absolutely great, and I wanted to be a nanny too. And then I got this message that clever girls didn't become nannies. They, you know, that was not a job for an academic girl. So I went through this. I looked into psychology. I particularly liked forensic psychology because I was quite interested by people like Ian Brady, you know, the Moors murderers and various people like them. But because I didn't work perhaps to the best of my ability at school, I actually didn't get the A-level grades to go to the universities that I wanted to. So I applied to Thames Polytechnic, it's now Greenwich University, and I got myself onto a primary education teaching degree, which I really, really loved. But still, I didn't stick at that very long because it wasn't quite the ideal job for me. So I've had this sort of, you know, gone through different ideas of what jobs I wanted to do. Then when I had my children, I decided that I didn't want to go back into teaching. And I just did some training in things that I found interesting. So I did a course, professional course in homeopathy. I did a course in massage. I had already been doing Tai Chi for quite a long time, so I qualified as a Tai Chi instructor. And then eventually I met some ladies, Elaine Wilkins and Kelly Aldershaw, that had set up a programme for people recovering from ME and chronic fatigue, and that really, really fascinated me. So I did their training, started working with ME recoverers, and what I discovered was that fairly commonly these people, they reflected back on where their decline in health had started, and they seemed to think that perhaps something had happened during their teenage years and somehow they weren't happy, or they felt like a round peg in a square hole, that kind of thing, weren't really going along the right career path. So, you know, that really, really interested me. But still, I've always had this real draw towards working with children, but I knew that it wasn't teaching. So I, coupled with my daughter actually having some issues with fatigue last year and not being very happy at school, I really had a good think around how I could put my knowledge of working with people with fatigue and my love of working with kids and teenagers. And also because I couldn't really find anybody that could help my daughter. And, you know, she says to me fairly often, if it hadn't been for, you know, our good lines of communication and talking a lot around things and, you know, just mulling things over, you know, she doesn't think she would have recovered so quickly. So that's really how I got to where I am, and why I'm running webinars, and why I have the Facebook group, and why I'm mentoring teenagers, because I feel very passionately that teenagers don't need you to give them all the answers. Sometimes they just need a sounding board. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what goes wrong in our relationships with our teenagers, what goes wrong in the parenting and why it goes wrong. And then I'm going to share with you the 3 key elements of a relationship and how they help you to have good conversations with your teenagers. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to explain a little bit, if it's okay, and you still want to listen, I'm going to explain to you how this is the basis of the work that I do, and how you can work more with me on a very comprehensive program. And then right near the end, I'm going to give you 5 excellent tips that you can take away and start using today. Okay, you might hear my cat meowing in the background, so I apologise for that. Okay, so what do you think parenting should be like? So the kind of answers that, when I ask people this, kind of answers I get from people are, oh, it's the hardest job in the world. You know, we set ourselves up for, it's a really, really tough job. It's really you have to be really responsible. You have to be really serious about it. You know, you're shaping another person's life, and that's true. But is it really, really difficult? So, you know, even before we have kids, we all have our ideas about what it should be like. You know, it should be hard, or it should be full of arguments, or it should be exhausting, or it should be the best job in the world. Maybe that's your experience, maybe that's your expectation. It should be fun, and it should be full of joy. And we're bombarded with these ideas. We're bombarded with, the media. There's always stuff in lifestyle magazines about, yummy mummies, and, there's even awards for the most yummy mummy. And most of us are, frankly, we're not like that, because we don't have, we just don't have that kind of lifestyle, and we're trying to hold down a job and a relationship with our partner maybe, and perhaps we've got 3 or 4 kids, and, life's just not like magazine lives, is it? On the television, there's television programs on now about parenting. You should do it like this. You should just sit your child on the naughty step, and if you don't, what do you expect? How can you expect them to behave if you don't do these kind of things? And also, we get these ideas from primarily being parented. What was it like for you as a child? What were your parents like? And what are your parents like with you now, parenting your children? Do you get told, well, if it was my child, I'd do it like this? Or, well, what can you expect? You never put your foot down, and you never tell them what to do and what not to do. We also see our friends, and we see other people. All of us have seen, the poor mum in the supermarket where her child suddenly throws a wobbly. I was that parent one day. I was pregnant with my second child, and my son suddenly threw a tantrum in WH Smith's one day and pulled over a great big box of cream eggs in front of the till, and I just let him get over his tantrum, but I was very aware that other people were looking at me and tutting. So, it doesn't make you feel great, even though, you try to stand in your own authority. It's still hard. So when you're getting all this bombardment of ideas, how do you know what to do? It's really, really tough to know. What are your preferences for parenting styles? Do you agree with your partner over the best thing to do? So really briefly, I would say, I've just lost my thread a little bit there. Yeah, I would say if you're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, if you're doing something because you feel you should, and it makes you feel bad, it makes you feel uncomfortable, then you're not doing it the right way for you. It might be right for, your next door neighbour, but it's not right for you. So you need to find another way of doing it. You need to take control of how you are parenting your teenagers, because if you feel uncomfortable with the way that you're doing it, and you're not completely at ease, you're not feeling confident, your teenager will pick up on your discomfort, and they're less likely to agree with you. You know, kids, you know, they're really, really good at finding your weakness. And, you know, teenagers really want to you know, mark their authority and their autonomy. And, you know, if they can find a weakness, you know, I would say that lots of them are gonna just go in for the kill. And it's perfect for them to take control of that situation. And if you're not comfortable with how you're dealing with it, you're just not going to do it well. But, you know, you might have been told that, you know, what can you expect? Teenagers will just argue with you. You know, they'll argue that black is white just because. That's what people think about teenagers. Well, you know, yeah, my teenagers and the teenagers that I work with, you know, they can be a little bit stroppy, and sometimes, yeah, they can argue with you. But actually, I don't think they believe that, you know, it's any better for them to argue than to try and work things through. And actually, I think all of that objectionable, you know, ranting and stropping, I think they know that it doesn't really do them any good, and I think they would much rather have your support as a, you know, a confident parent. So let's just go on to the next slide. So you have this, you know, this internal chatter going on. I should be doing it this way because that's, you know, that's just, you know, that's the way you are a good parent. You know, it's one of those really deep values, isn't it? You know, I am a good parent. We don't like people to think that we're not good parents, but, you know, if something's not comfortable for you, you don't like it. So the traditional rules of parenting, and you know, this is probably my generation, but certainly the way my parents were parented. You know, children were expected to do as they were told, even to the point where they left home. You know, it was all this sort of, you'll do as you're told as long as you're living under my roof. Traditionally, as I've said before, teenage years are just a time where you do argue all the time, and you should just expect abuse from them because that's how they're programmed. That's how teenagers are programmed to work. And yeah, it's a really, really tough job. So they're the traditional rules of parenting. So what's wrong with those views? Well, anything that's uncomfortable for you can't be good, can it? It can't be right for you, and it's just going to be draining. It's not great. You know, when you're trying to discuss something with your teenager, if you're feeling uncomfortable, that's very draining for you. And that sort of confrontational and argumentative sort of approach means that you're in defensive mode or attack mode, and you're never in a place of stillness and calm where you can actually connect with your intuition and work out what's going on and what you need to do. All of these sort of confrontational approaches, you know, they're a very one-way street. And I would question, is that really the kind of relationship we want to have with our teenagers? And certainly, I'm guessing if you're listening to this, then it's probably not. And you're looking for a way to have a two-way process in that conversation. So all of those sort of traditional ways of parenting, you know, the do as you're told, arguing, it leads to this really in us as parents, doesn't it? What on earth are we going to do? I'm at my wit's end. That's what people say to me. I just don't know how to speak to them anymore. So you end up arguing, you end up tearing your hair out, and you get this reaction. Somebody I met yesterday was saying to me, oh, my 11-year-old daughter, you know, she's like a teenager already. And he said to me, do you know what I mean when I say that I just get the eyes? I just get the eyes rolling at me. And I said, yeah, actually, I do know exactly what that is. So I'm going to tell you today how to change your perspective, how to have a two-way process with your teens. And I think that, you know, as parents, we do want to be of service to our kids. You know, we want them to grow up as grow into great adults. You know, we want them to be happy teenagers, but grow into confident, successful, happy adults. And, you know, one of the ways that you can help your teenager to do that is to be of service to them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit further on. So you want your conversations to be a two-way process, which means that you share things with them, they share things with you, and you discover things about them. You know, you learn, they become, as they get older, kids rely less on you, and their focus shifts from being all about you to being all about their friends eventually. And you don't know so much about them unless you have a great conversation with them, unless you're able to, you know, talk to them and not put their backs up. And also, I would say, you know, think that there's always more than one solution. Your solution might not be the one that they choose, and you might not think that it's the best way. But actually, there's benefits, you know, in perhaps the solution that you don't think is the best one. And I'll just tell you something that's just come to mind, actually. My son last year, he was invited into a quite select strings orchestra. And really and truly, you know, he probably was the best on his instrument, if not, you know, one of the best. And he was put as the number 4 player, and I was a bit upset about that. And I said to him, well, I don't think that you should do it. You know, I think it's belittling your talent, your skill. And he said to me, I just want to do it. I'm not that bothered that I'm actually not going to be the lead. I'm just going to do it because I just want to do it. And actually, I saw over the year that there were huge benefits to him just being in that orchestra, and it didn't actually really matter that he wasn't the leader, because there were lots and lots of other things that he really benefited from. And I did think, well, I'm really, really glad I didn't put my foot down and say, no, you're not doing it, because it's, you know, it's not benefiting you in any way, because he would have lost out on a huge amount of other things. So what we also need to consider is that, you know, you will get objections. However great you are at structuring a conversation, teenagers are, you know, they're emerging adults. They're like the little caterpillars that are emerging as beautiful butterflies. And I guess in some ways they are pre-programmed to object to things. What you don't really want is for them to really, really dig their heels in and just shout and argue with you all of the time. And then we want to try to encourage them to make a decision, whether you think it's a good decision or a bad decision. You know, unless it's a life-threatening decision, I think it's always good to make a decision. You know, indecision is not really a good place to be. If you haven't, you know, if you've ever been in a situation where you can't decide and you have it going over and over and over in your brain, in your mind, and, you know, you feel very drawn to one thing, and then you think, oh yeah, but what about this? You know, it's a very, very draining place to be. It's not a good energy space to be in. And sometimes that can lead you to making a knee-jerk reaction, and that's not really what we want for our teenagers. We want them to make considered decisions. And also, I try to be sensitive with teenagers. You know, they're sensitive because they're going through a huge amount of change in their internal environment, their external environment, their friends, their choices about their future. It leaves them feeling vulnerable, and they need to be treated with care and validated. And I always try to leave them in a better place so that they feel calmer, happier, more secure after we've had a chat. So the key elements in your relationship with your teenagers. So I want you to, if you choose to, always bear in mind the three key elements are to serve them, to provide safety for them, and to use a system when you're talking to them. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. So, to serve your teenagers, what does that mean? So it just really means that you always have the best interests of your teenager at heart. So it's not necessarily about you. It's not necessarily about you telling them about your experience and your expertise. You know, I don't really like people to say to me, well, I've done it all before and I know, because I just think that rubbish. It's rubbishes the way my views and my opinions. You know, they might have found that didn't work for them, but it might work for me. So, you know, encourage them to tell you what they think, what they believe. And that doesn't mean that you have to be passive or weak or wishy-washy. You know, it does mean that you can provide them with firm guidance, but it just means that I guess it's just a mindset, really, that you're there to help them. You're there to make things better for them. You know, and I do believe that it is your duty as a parent to do this well. You know, and as parents, sometimes our own agenda might feel more important to us, but actually, your job as a parent is to serve your child, serve your teenager, and to make things the best for them that it can be. So provide them with safety. You know, I've just said that, you know, teenagers are quite vulnerable and many things are uncertain for them, despite this, you know, despite the front and the bluff and the I know it all. You know, I can remember thinking I did know it all as a teenager. But I look back now and think, oh, goodness me, you know, it's just, I don't know whether it was luck or judgment that got me through my teenage years safely, really. You know, remember that you are, as the parent, you have been through, you know, you've lived a lot longer than them. And in many respects, you are the expert. So I see it really as your job that you build confidence and trust with your teenager, and that gives them safety in you, that, you know, they can be confident in you and that you're not going to make things worse for them, and that you're not going to push them into anything that they really, really don't want. Now, of course, you know, when you start this process, they might be fairly resistant to this, because they're just used to resisting everything. So you just need to be confident with them and assertive with them, and they will feel safe with you. So this is the one, really. Using a system with your teenagers, and it sounds very manipulative, doesn't it? Okay, I'm just going to check that we're still getting the sound. Yeah, I'm still recording the sound. That's brilliant. So using a system, it sounds manipulative and it sounds like you've got an agenda. Okay, well, it's not that. Okay, it's not having an agenda. It's just having scaffolding, if you like, or having a structure that you can have your conversation within. And it means that you won't get bogged down with the objections, the emotions, and you won't get dragged into tit for tat arguing. You know, many people say to me that when their teenager starts, they just get instantly put back into their teenage space and they lock horns with their teenager. Well, I think if you have a system, if you have this sort of framework that you can always, you know, visualize and hold on to, you're less likely to get into that locking horns position, and you're more likely to have a positive outcome. It'll give you focus, it'll help you to be clear, it'll help you to have confidence, and it will help your teenager to feel held and supported by you. Okay, so my quick 3-step system that I'm going to tell you about today, this is a really quick overview, and I'll tell you a little bit later about my 5-step system that will give you much more structure. But I'm going to, as I haven't got a huge amount of time tonight, I'm going to give you my little mini system that you can go away and work with today. So, first of all, asking lots of questions, but not asking too many questions. So the right level of questions, which will enable you to listen to them without interrupting them and letting them be heard, hearing their problems, their frustrations, their hopes and dreams, how they want the outcome to be, you know, really listen to them. And it means you can understand what the problem is. And then moving on to step 2, the solutions. Discuss what possible solutions they could be. You know, it doesn't matter how weird and wild and wacky they are, because you can discuss them. You know, what's the best solution, perhaps? What's the solution you're most comfortable with? What do you think you can do about this? And then ask them if they can make a decision on how to go forward. What do they need to be able to make a decision? Do they need anything from you? Do they need you to help them with anything? Do they need you to do anything for them? Or can they do it on their own? So or the decision might be, I can't actually make a decision about that today. I want to give it, you know, another 24 hours thought. But, you know, as I said before, don't let that drag on, because that indecision is draining. I do feel it's better to decide on something and try it, and then you can review it and see whether it's working well for you or not. So that's a sort of brief system. So how do you put that into place? What do you need to go forward? So for the next sort of 5 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a 7-week workshop that I'm going to run online. And the reason I'm doing this is so that I can mentor, really, not teach, just mentor parents like you, so that we have a happy generation of teenagers and happy parents. Because I would really love it if everybody could say to me, oh, you know, my teenagers are the best kids in the world. You know, we do argue a bit, but actually it never lasts very long, and it's not very serious. And actually my teenagers have grown into great adults, and, you know, they're doing really, really well. So that's why I've started it. And the program is called You Really Can Talk to Your Teens. And the sort of subheading to that is, and they can talk to you. So as I say, it's a 7-week modular program. And so the first module, we're going to look a lot at what goes wrong, why it goes wrong. Can we recognise what's going wrong in our own relationship with our teenagers? And then the second module, good and bad conversations. You know, how do you know whether you're having a good conversation? How do you know when the conversation suddenly gets out of control? What has triggered that, and how do you pull it back? So, you know, the type of things that you say, the type of language that you use, the time of day perhaps that you choose to talk to your teenager. And so the third module, the conversation process. So what happens in a conversation? How do we know, how do we know whether that conversation is positive? How do we know whether it's progressing in the right way or not? And then we're going to start, the fourth module is getting started. I'm going to go over the outline of how you have a conversation and give you a really, really good structure, so that, you know, you might not always use it fully, but you can start to use elements of it and see what effects it has. Then how you get towards solutions. How do you get your teenager to suggest solutions when they go, oh, I don't know, I just don't know what to do anymore? How do you do that? So we're going to be looking at, you know, ways of, you know, you suggesting solutions without them being rejected, ways of them coming up with solutions without you rejecting them. And then, of course, because it's teenagers, you know, I'm sure you're all going to be worried that it's all very well having a conversation structure, but, you know, your teenager is used to objecting to everything. So how do you deal with that? How do you avoid it? That's ideal if you can avoid those objections. But then if they do object to everything that's going on, how do you deal with that? And then the last module will be putting it all into practice, pulling together all the ideas, and then Q&A session. So that's the whole program. And you can have a look on, I'm going to give you the booking page, and there's lots more information on there if you want to have a look at more detail of the 7 modules. So the way you join is to go through onto this website page, and as I say, it will give you lots and lots of details. Now, it's going to be a 7-week program, and you'll get all of the recordings as well. So if you can't join me live, or you want to listen to them back, I'm going to send you the links or the recordings. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to send those out yet, but you will have those forever to be able to listen to. And then I'm going to send you some worksheets to go through as we're doing the course. And there's also the Facebook page that you can join. And that's a really great community. You know, I don't have all of the answers to everything. You know, other people have different experiences of their teenagers, and people in different countries and different environments have different experiences with their teenagers. And it's a really, really great place for you to get to share your ideas, share any questions that you have. So it's going to be £197, which I think is brilliant value for a 7-week online course. And I was having to think about that, and because I'm really, really keen for you to join, I'm going to reduce that to £97 for the next 72 hours. When you go through on that page, you'll see that the price is £97. And after 72 hours, I'm going to take that page down. So if you want to book within the next 3 days, it's going to be £97. If you want to book today, so actually I might keep that up today and tomorrow so that you get a chance to listen to the recording. If you book today or tomorrow, I would love to offer you a 60-minute Skype or phone call with me. And that can be for you to talk about your kids if you want to, or your job, or your any, your goals for the future, anything really. And the reason I'm doing that is because I know that when you have kids and teenagers, with the best intentions, you think, oh, I'm going to do that. That sounds great. That sounds just the kind of thing that I need. And then you think, I'll do that later, or I'll do it tomorrow. And you get caught up with something. We all have very busy lives, and we get caught up with something. And then a few days later, you think, oh, yeah, I was meant to do that. And then the opportunity has gone. So because I really want to encourage you to do it now, that's why I'm offering you the reduced price and the 60-minute Skype or phone call. A 60-minute consultation with me, a one-off, is normally £72. So really, you're getting all of that just for £97, which is great. Okie doke. So We're now on to the top tips for today. So the kind of things I would advise you to do. The first one is, what kind of conversation do you need to have with your teenager? Is it a really full-on, let's make a decision about the future? Or perhaps is it just a sort of little quick tip, or they just need to be heard? Try to distinguish what type of conversation you need to be having. Is it a chat in the car, and actually you don't need to offer them any kind of opinions or advice, they just want to have a little chit chat? Or are they really looking for you to step in your parent role and to help them decide something? And then accept, with all conversations, and this is true for teenagers as well, accept that sometimes they are going to say no to you. And sometimes that's okay. They are emerging as adults, and they're trying to put their own boundaries in place, and they're trying to decide on things. And actually, it's okay to say no sometimes. And many of us as adults, and I would say this is true of me, I didn't learn when it was acceptable to say no. And that's something that I'm still learning, but I'm doing better at that now. I have this overwhelming sort of thought that if somebody asks me to do something, then I have to say yes, because otherwise I'll upset them. But actually, that's not always good for me. And as parents, we need to accept that sometimes that our teenagers are saying no for a reason. Now, if they're, we obviously want them to say that in a polite and courteous way. So that's something that we'll talk about in the online course, when it's acceptable, and when actually you need to step in and say, as your parent, I'd really like you to do this. When you're looking at solutions with them and you have a great idea, ask them for permission. Ask them if it's okay if you tell them what you think. Just say, oh, I was talking to somebody, I was talking to another mum that I know, and she said that her daughter did this. What do you think? Is it okay if I tell you? Is it okay? I've read this in a book. Is it okay if I explain it to you? And it feels a little bit clunky, and sometimes it feels a little bit false. But, if you ask them if it's okay, they'll often say yes, because they don't feel like you're ramming it down their throat. And again, on the same sort of theme, if you've got a really good idea for something, you need to still allow them to speak and be heard. Otherwise, again, they'll think you're just shoving it in their face and you're being pushy, you're talking to them. So stick to the structure of discussing and sharing solutions, rather than you just telling them, or you just saying, well, I think. And also know when the right time to let go is of the conversation. You don't, sometimes it's just not worth the effort and the energy that it takes. So it's okay to say, I don't think now is the right time to talk about this, or let's talk about it later. And the main thing that I'd like to say really is that, really enjoy your teenagers, the years you have them. And it's such a cliche to say that, having your kids, it goes so fast. 1 minute they're 2 and the next minute they're 22. Well, it does go quickly. And, teenagers are this, I have this just really clear vision of them as being, these emerging, beautiful things. And, they don't always get it right. And, they mess up along the way. And sometimes you think, oh my goodness, how are they ever going to dig themselves out of this? But, they have their future in front of them, and it's really, really exciting. And it's great that you can share that with them. And also, just because you didn't feel like you dealt with it well in the past, you haven't been able to have great conversations with them in the past. doesn't mean that you can't do that in the future, and that you can't learn how to do it brilliantly, and that you can't have a great relationship with your kids, because you actually absolutely can. So I'm just going to put this slide up again, and so it's all glittery and it's great. It can be tough, it can be tricky, but you've created these kids, and you can help them to create a brilliant future. So I'm just going to leave this up for a few minutes. So it's a 7-week program. You really can talk to your teenagers. It's just £97 for the whole of the 7 weeks, all of the recordings, the Facebook group, and the worksheets. And I'll also be giving you some tips to try out at home, and tips on books to read, that sort of thing, to look on YouTube, that kind of thing. If you are able to book today or tomorrow, you'll also, it doesn't say that on the booking page that you'll get a 60-minute Skype call, but I will be able to see when you've booked it, and I'll contact you to book your 60-minute Skype call with me, or phone call. That's for you as a parent, because you're showing commitment to your kids, and I congratulate you on that, and I want to give you something for you. So that's a free bonus, if you like. And then these are just the ways that you can contact me. You can contact me here through the website. There's a sign up box, and there is a free gift on the website that you can download. It's called the Happy Teen Blueprint, and that will give you even more tips for helping your teenagers. Up here and near the top is the address for the Facebook group, and I love that group. I go in there and I love the comments and the things that people post in there. People are really helpful and supportive to each other. It's really, really great. So you can join that. And there again, www.well-kids.co.uk/really-can-talk-teenagers is the booking page. And I just really like to thank you for listening to this. I've actually recorded it on my laptop rather than my desktop, because I don't actually know what's going on with the sound. I seem to have got it on all the same settings, and I'm going to have to spend this week actually looking at why the microphone's not working. So thanks for bearing with me last night, and I really, really hope that you have got some benefit from joining me on the webinar, and that I'll get to meet you on the 7-week program. So that's me, Vicky Raven, finishing the webinar. Thanks very much. Bye.